Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Family Education and Justice Committee of 14th of January. I won't say Happy New Year because we're past that. Welcome to this hybrid meeting of the Family Education and Justice Committee. I just remind all attendees this meeting is being recorded and webcast live on the Council's YouTube channel. I've agreed the attendance of some members remotely and remind them to mute their microphones when not speaking. For any members of the public watching, please note that all the public committee reports, including details of specific recommendations, are available on the Council's website. So we go to apologies or substitutes. Laura?
Thank you, Convener. We have apologies from Councillor Ronnie Proctor, with Councillor Ian McLaren substituting. Also apologies from Councillor Beth Whiteside, with Councillor Kenny Breeze substituting.
Thank you. Any declarations of interest or statements of transparency? No, I don't see any hands there. Right, number 3 is the minute of the previous meeting. I suppose you've all read it. Do you approve it? Do you agree to approve that? Thank you very much. And we will go on to number 4, which is the Adult Protection Biennial Report, April 22 to March 24. And we've got Ewan West, Independent Chair, who's going to introduce it. Ewan, thank you. Welcome.
Sorry, we're not hearing anything.
That's because there's nothing happening at the moment. Ewan has just taken his seat.
Oh, that's a relief, thanks.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you, Convener. Good afternoon to everyone else. And delighted to be here today to present to you the Adult Support and Protection Biennial Report covering the period April 22 to March 24. I hope you found that it's a positive report, and it sets out many of the key pieces of work that have been undertaken over that 2-year period. Members may note who've read the biennial reports previously that the format for this one is actually much different to what we've previously presented, and the reason for that is that the Scottish Government actually specified on this occasion what they wanted, and they posed the questions as opposed to us previously being given a bit of a free run on what we wanted to report to elected members and to Scottish Government. So I feel it's a wee bit clunky in bits and there's a wee bit of repetition, so I apologise for that in advance, but it was something that excuse me, was out with our give. Having said that, it does, I think, fairly well summarise our activities over the period. I'm sure everyone's read the report, and I don't intend going through it in detail, but maybe just highlight a number of key points that I think are important for you to hear from me about, and then I'll be happy to take any questions. I think the first observation probably that you may have is around the numbers of referrals by source, which you'll see has there's been a fairly significant rise over the period compared to previous years. I don't think there's one particular reason for that increase, but probably a number of factors. Firstly, probably improved awareness across all professionals as to the importance and requirement to submit adult protection referrals. We've done lots of work with staff to improve their understanding of adult protection, and I think that now has resulted in an increase in the number of referrals received. I think there's more public awareness of what adult protection actually means, its importance in terms of protecting vulnerable people, and how people can report and support those who are experiencing difficulties. And I think probably the third observation I would make around that is just a reflection on the number of people engaging in substance misuse, having some mental health challenges as well, and the impact on the cost of living during the reporting period. So I think collectively there's perhaps 3 reasons there why the figures have increased. And this morning I just thought I would check for committee that the figures for this current year that we're in are probably around the same as they were for last year. So there's no clear drop-off, but we'll see what it's like over the whole period. So that's probably about 8 months' figures we're looking at, and it's around the same, maybe slightly less, but around the same for this year. I think the main purpose of adult protection activities, I'm sure you'll all agree, is to improve the lives and well-being of vulnerable adults in Angus. And for me and for those that work with me, it's important for us to continuously review the professional practice in Angus and to ensure where there's agency learning that this is embedded into the professional practice. And I hope you can get a sense of reading, when you read the report, that this is achieved by us here in Angus doing regular case reviews, distributing learning packs, self-evaluation, and holding events such as network of support meetings, which are alluded to in the report. It's also important to hear the lived experience of those who are subject to adult support and protection, and we gather that information post-case conferences and review case conferences, and also through our colleagues at Independent Advocacy. But it's still an area where we need to try and increase that feedback, and our friends at Advocacy are leading on that on behalf of the committee. Just a couple of other points. I would say financial abuse continues to be a very prevalent occurrence across Scotland, but also here in Angus. But as is mentioned in the report, we have a very robust response to financial harm here in Angus, and that was recognised by the Care Inspectorate in the recent Phase 1 national inspection. There were some very positive comments made by the Care Inspectorate and acknowledging the excellent work here, and certainly puts the area ahead of most partnerships in Scotland in tackling this criminality, because that is actually what it is. It's criminality and its impact on victims. So I think there's a real positive there in the way that we deal with that here in Angus. One other point I wanted to clarify was that there's reference to missing adults and our work with the missing charity in the report, and that's moved on since this report was written. We've partnered with the charity to undertake a comprehensive review of our policy and practice in relation to missing adults. The review highlighted some very positive aspects of what we do, but also some areas for improvement. And those discussions are ongoing, and I'm fairly confident that within the next couple of months we'll have a very good and robust process to deal with missing persons on a multi-agency basis, when not just in terms of finding them, but when they are found and returned home, and follow-up work with them to address any issues they may have. So we're working hard at that, and I'll hopefully be able to report on that as time progresses. Just also by way of an update, in the report you will have seen the comments in relation to Phase 1 of that national inspection that was undertaken in Angus, and provided some very good commentary. Angus volunteered for Phase 2 of that inspection, and only last week were we informed that we've been accepted onto that inspection as one of 11 authorities in Scotland. Authorities had to put themselves forward for it with criteria as to why we felt that Angus would be suitable, and we've now been accepted. Phase 2 is not probably as onerous as Phase 1. It's focusing on assisting us as a partnership with our self-evaluation, which will enhance what we do already. And it's looking at issues such as escalation of risk management, early intervention and prevention, early multi-agency discussions, and trauma-informed approaches. So having just been told about this last week, that we've been accepted, we've got some briefing work coming up with the Care Inspectorate, and the inspection is to be launched on the 24th of January. So I think overall, looking forward, I think it's really good to be part of these inspections. There's always learning out of it, and they're going to come on board and assist us with how we can conduct self-evaluation across some of the areas of work that we do here in Angus. So that just came in after in the last couple of days. So I'll probably just finish at that. But looking ahead, just to summarise, I think with some of the changes that we've made in our public protection arrangements, having brought adult support protection together with child protection and violence against women and girls under one committee, I think that's been a real positive. We're going to do a review on that in May, because that will be a year since we moved to the new arrangements. And we just want to look and see where it's worked well, where we've still got a wee bit to do. But I think it's encouraged everyone across these different areas of work to adopt a whole family approach when we're addressing some of the issues. And as you can imagine, they're all pretty much interlinked: child protection, adult protection, and violence against women and girls. And I think it's given us a much more cohesive strategy and way of working in public protection across Angus. So pleased to deliver what I think is a fairly positive report. And as always, we're not going to rest on our laurels on the back of the inspection. We've still got work to do. We can always improve. And I think just finally, it would be remiss of me not to thank all those working in the field of adult support and protection in Angus. They work extremely hard in often challenging circumstances, and it's because we have dedicated, committed and well-trained staff here that I think we get outcomes such as we did in the inspection, and also why we're all here, so we can really help those individuals who require our help, those who are vulnerable out there. So without our staff being as committed as they are and delivering good professional work, then it might not be the same outcome. So I think it's appropriate to thank them. I'll just go back to you, Convener.
Thank you very much, Ewan. Yes, and I think all the committee would like to say the same. Thank you to all the staff, because we do know how difficult it is at the moment. And they do just such a fantastic job, and we so much rely on them to look after the people of Angus. Thanks very much for the updates. That's always very handy, actually, just to bring us up to date a bit. So, any questions? Heather, sorry, Councillor Doran.
Thank you. I've got two questions, if I might. The first one relates to the slight shift that's noted in the higher percentage of adults aged between 50 to 64 being referred, and an increase in the 75 to 84 year age group, where there's a decrease in the age 35 to 49 age group. I just wondered if there was any reasons why you think that might be the case. It's not detailed so much in the report, so I just wondered if there was something around that. And the next question related to the challenges that are noted around the data, IT systems and prevention. Are those financial challenges that are being faced? Is it more complicated for that? And is it ones that are going to be addressed or can be addressed locally, or is it relating to national issues? And I know that's referred to in the report as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. The first question around the age range and is a bit of a difficult one to put a figure, but I would say I alluded to earlier about financial harm, and financial harm usually targets the older age groups who are more vulnerable in some circumstances, and these people who undertake these scams are very well aware of that. So because we're seeing a bit of an increase in financial harm, and I'm sure you'll see, there's not a day goes past where you see something around that in the media, and out there in the real world here in Angus, it's happening. That's reflected here in Angus. So I think that's probably one reason for it. I'm actually kind of surprised with you about the 35 to 49 figure, that there's a decrease there. I'm kind of hoping that might be due to early intervention, and we're trying as much as possible, and better than we probably did previously, to intervene in cases at an early stage, so it doesn't actually develop into a full adult support and protection investigation. And I think hopefully everyone would agree that is the way to go, and we've put quite a lot of our effort into prevention. because to me, the only way we're going to address some of the issues is to prevent them happening in the first place. So prevention, early intervention, and I think with that age group, we're more likely to achieve some success there. And that's not disparaging to older people, because probably I am one of them. But you know, I think that's reality. So that's probably as good as I can give you on that one. Secondly, the challenges. Yeah, IT is always a challenge. Fortunately, in Angus, we're about to move over to Eclipse, which will help considerably in the summary of our data. We have members may be familiar with Beth Reader, who really does a lot of really useful work in pulling data together, her and her team and the analyst. And I think once we get Eclipse, we'll be able to move away from the manual counting. This morning, to get that idea of where we are just now with figures, it pretty much was a manual count, and we want to get away from that. So I think that will help going forward. In the report, there's mention that national IT issues pretty much come up in most reviews that happen, because reality tells us that we don't have an overarching IT system that speaks to all the different agencies. I've raised that personally with the Minister probably more than a year ago at a meeting I was at, and as much as they would like to change that, I don't see that happening anytime soon. In fact, I don't think anybody's actually come up with a solution for it. But it is a challenge. But to get over that, it comes back to good communication in other ways, and working across the multi-agency agenda. I think it will continue to be a challenge, but I think here in Angus we're trying to locally address that as much as we can. I know that's probably not the best answer I can give you, but that's kind of where we are with it right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Speed and then Bell.
Yeah, thanks. Crucial work that goes on day in, day out. And you touched on kind of some of the perhaps reasons why there is increase in referral rates. I just wondered if through that kind of identification of what the reasons are, if there's any theme coming through with regards to ongoing cuts in funding, reduced resources, and is that something that staff teams feel that they can kind of, I guess, reflect in their kind of reporting without through fear of it making look like Angus isn't doing well? And is that something that Angus Council are in direct communication with Scottish Government to be able to report if that is indeed why we're perhaps seeing an increase, because we don't have adequate funding and resources?
The microphone. You.
Thank you. I think we're fortunate here in Angus that we're a reasonably smaller authority than perhaps some others. And I think we can get over some of the resource issues, if there are any, because we work together very well. Rebecca might be in a better place to give you specifics in terms of agencies, but nobody has, as independent chair, councillor, nobody has come to me, and it's not been discussed at our public protection meetings, that financial restrictions have impacted on how they do their business. I know things are tight. I know people are probably doing more than probably previously, but that message has not come through to me. So I would hope that if that was the case, then it would be raised at our public protection meetings, and then I would obviously raise that with the Chief Social Work Officer and the Chief Executive and others at the Chief Officers Group. One area where it does touch on our support protection, where there are some funding issues, is in relation to violence against women and girls. And there is a connection between both our support protection and violence against women and girls. So there was a real concern that the national funding for violence against women and girls, the Equally Safe funding, was not going to be awarded for the forthcoming financial year. We were told just after the budget in December that it would be, but we've not yet been told what that's going to look like in detail. And also with the increase in national insurance, employers' contributions come 1st of April, that will have an impact on the specialist services. So there is some issues there, which in some ways also link into adult support and protection. I think it's something that we're always keeping an eye on to make sure that we can use our resources in the best way. And that's why I think our self-evaluation and continuously reviewing what we're doing helps us to achieve what we still need to achieve. But maybe Rebecca could comment on specifics.
I think just as Ewan said, in terms of any concerns regarding reduced funding, they're certainly not coming to our attention at the Protecting People Committee. However, I think what I would say is that services work really hard to work with those are the most vulnerable. So those who are in need of protection will be the priority. So, which may potentially mean that those in a position who don't require that level of protection might have to receive less of a service. I'm not sure if that's happening. We need to go back and check that, but I am assured that in terms of those who require the highest level of protection, that is in place.
Thanks, Rebecca. Councillor Bell.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ewan and Rebecca, for the report so far. Ewan, you actually already picked up a couple of things I was going to ask about, so that's really helpful around the quality assurance work. But the report really highlights the depth and the spread of the work that's involved in protecting people in Angus, and that links in for me around capacity of our workforce and the potential for vicarious trauma and stress-related conditions in our workforce. And I just wondered if you had any narrative around our partners around the table and around how healthy they feel their workforce is, dealing with increased demand and complexity of some really distressing individual cases. And also I'd like to pick up, if that's okay, on the prevention agenda that you mentioned and your offer on page 35 around having basically a grown-up conversation around investment in that agenda and discussions to take that forward, and how you would like that to happen. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Taking your first point, again, nothing has come to my notice about staff feeling stressed or any concerns around that in dealing with what is an increasing workload. I do regularly speak with Rebecca here on my left, with Kirsty, with John Cooper from the Health and Social Care Partnership, with senior police staff, with senior NHS staff. I mean, I have regular discussions with them all out with our scheduled meetings, and it's not something that's been brought to my attention. I do know people are, obviously under some pressure. I think it's about us identifying our priorities going forward in terms of allowing staff to be able to address the frontline work, but at the same time also providing them with continuous professional development opportunities to make sure that our workforce is as skilled as it can be. And I hope that will help them in their work going forward. So there's things that we can do as a Public Protection Committee to try and alleviate any concerns that people may have and to lessen their workload in terms of training, development, and I hesitate to say it, but bureaucracy. Whilst we need to do certain things around administration and data protection and all that kind of stuff that we absolutely need to do, if we can reduce any other bureaucracy around their work, then I think that's important, and hopefully staff would feel the benefit of it. So I'm not really seeing it, Councillor, to be honest. But something, as I said earlier, we obviously keep a close eye on. I'm sure Rebecca and other agencies would be updating me if that was a particular concern. Rebecca's probably got something she wants to say here.
Yeah, just to add, actually, it's a timely question, Councillor Bell, because we just had discussions in our Learning Review subgroup this week in terms of vicarious trauma for those involved in cases where there's been the most serious of concerns brought to our attention. And we agreed this week that one of the pieces of work that we need to undertake is ensuring that all the agencies involved in the Protecting People agendas have support in place for their work staff. So whilst those around the table were saying that their agencies were assured, we wanted to do much wider scoping. So that is on part of our plan going forward in the next few months.
Yeah, I would just add to that, Councillor. We do receive a number of referrals for learning reviews on particular cases. But we need to be careful to make sure that those referrals meet the specific criteria for taking these forward, because learning review cases do require a very significant amount of resource being put into them. And whilst if a case review has to go ahead, absolutely will if it meets the criteria, but we've had two recently, which Rebecca has chaired these meetings, where we felt we don't need to do it, we can do it in a better way, less stress and work upon staff. So we're cognisant of these issues to try and help staff move forward, and if there's a better way of doing a review other than a full learning review, then we'll do it. And we're very much aware of those options. So, yeah, we just need to keep an eye on it, Councillor. I think that's what we're trying to say here. Secondly, around prevention, those who attend our public protection meetings are probably slightly fed up with me talking about prevention. I've alluded to it earlier on, because coming from my background in the police, you know, if we can avoid an investigation and avoid the trauma of adults actually having to go through adult support and protection investigations, then we should absolutely do so. And really the only way or two ways to do that. One's about public awareness and trying to avoid particularly financial harm. And following on from that is our prevention agenda. Now, in our new arrangements, we've developed a prevention delivery subgroup, and their focus is about doing what we do well just now in terms of prevention, and a lot of that is about public messaging. But we've tasked them in our strategic plan going forward. We're actually looking ahead to see what we can do better. And that's where I think we need to have that grown-up conversation about it. And happy for anybody, elected members included, to be part of that discussion. Because I don't think we've probably got all the answers. And when I speak to my colleagues throughout Scotland, chairs, independent chairs on our committees, again, it's not one that I think anybody's quite cracked yet. And it's about taking good ideas from elsewhere. If they're working, then we need to try and look at how we can adopt them here in Angus. It's actually about also coming up with some, not just for the sake of coming up with new ideas, but actually new ideas that will actually have an impact going forward. And those number of referrals that I've talked about at the start, I'd like to see them coming down, because I think that might be a consequence of our preventative work going forward. So I think prevention is always on our agenda at the public protection meetings, and it may be that we need to have a wider conversation in this coming year about how we can achieve that.
Thanks very much, Ian. Comments? Councillor.
Thank you. I was just going to come back as a follow-up to my question, if that's okay, and provide a brief comment. And it was really just to clarify as well, and when I was talking about kind of lack of funding, resources, I didn't just mean kind of monetary, but also in terms of human resource. And we know across the Health and Social Care Partnership there are challenges there within the workforces providing services, and I guess that's where I was coming from around, is there anything coming through that would indicate that those challenges are impacting on people's vulnerabilities? And it would be good to know and have some assurance that those conversations can take place within your meetings, so that, you know, staff teams, team leaders, managers are able to confidently say when, you know, there just isn't the resource there, and I'm feeling the need to have to report positively for local reporting or government. And I think, you know, just to give a couple of quick examples in terms of young people's transition from children's services, education, social work to adult services, you know, perhaps there is risks there, and it would be good that, you know, teams were able to reflect that, right the way through to our older people who perhaps are waiting or reliant on, you know, 4 times a day care to keep them safe, but are maybe only getting 1 or 2 visits a day. It would really be good to know that we can develop a culture where it's not all about reporting and looking good, but actually reflecting the true vulnerabilities within our communities. So hopefully those conversations can take place. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Speed. We'll take that as a comment. Okay, thank you very much. Any other comments? Okay, we'll move to the recommendations. There are 3 recommendations: approving the content of this report, agree the submission of the report to Scottish Ministers, and noting the Council's cross-departmental responsibilities in relation to adult protection. Do we agree? Thank you. Thank you very much, Ian. Thank you. And Rebecca, thank you. Moving on to 5, is the Arbroath Academy Further Inspection Report. Neil Loudon is going to introduce the report, but Mrs. Judith Mohammed, the head teacher, is here in attendance to answer any questions you might have. Thanks, Neil.
Thank you, Convener. Good afternoon, everyone. Agenda item 5 indeed asks members to note the further inspection report for Arbroath Academy that was published on the 1st of October 2024 by His Majesty's Inspectorate for Education. The committee report details the current position and key strengths identified following the original inspection report published in June 2023 in Appendix 1. As the convener said, Judith Mohammed, the head teacher, has joined me in the chamber today, and we'll be happy to take any questions from members. Finally, convener, the report also requests members agree that a final local authority report be brought back to Family, Education and Justice in line with the what happens next section of the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Councillor Gregg.
Thank you, convener. Firstly, I'm going to say I'm a proud former pupil of Arbroath Academy, and I was invited to come along by Mrs. Mohammed for a tour around a little while ago, which I thoroughly enjoyed. So thank you for that. Reading through the report, there's obviously the areas that need to be identified, but I think reading through the report, there's a lot of good stuff in there as well. So let's not forget about that and the work that's been done there. So well done, and thank you for that. So my question really is, going on from that, from your inspection 23 to the one on 24, there was an improvement. So that's another positive to take from this report. So what did you do, and what are your plans going forward to continue to build on that success?
Thank you, Councillor Gregg. I suppose it would be important, first of all, to pay tribute to the staff and the young people and the parents of Arbroath Academy in terms of the journey that we've been on over the past wee while, and getting to this point and getting the recognition from HMIE. It would also be fair to say, though, that it has not been a pain-free experience, but we are now in a place where it's really encouraging how well the staff are embracing new developments. One of the areas which has allowed us to make improvements is that we are now part of the Accelerate group of schools, which is funded by the Wood Foundation in Aberdeen, and it's a collective of 19 schools across the northeast of Scotland, from Banff down to Carnoustie High School, where we now have 4 Angus schools on board. Being part of this programme has allowed high quality professional learning for staff to take place, and through that staff have really developed what they're doing in the classroom and the experiences that young people are now having, which have improved since the original inspection, and that was recognised. So that is one of our key drivers in terms of improvement, and the areas that we focus on through that Accelerate programme are project-based learning, oracy training, which is delivered by the University of Cambridge, and there have also been study visits to the XP School in England and the academies of Nashville last year, and in March we have 3 staff going to visit Detroit and visit schools there. So the staff exposure to this training, to seeing the high quality work in place in other areas has really allowed us as a staff to develop. It has also been, we've been able to create opportunities for staff to work together. So it's not just about going out and seeing what's happening in other places, but taking what we've learnt from other contexts and being able to make it work for the young people of Arbroath Academy.
Thank you. Is that okay? Can I have Councillor Doran, please?
Thank you. I think in part it's already been answered what I was going to ask the question. It's just slightly different. It was, and you've answered part of it, which was to say kind of well done on that speed in which some of this has been implemented and put within the school. But I note that the interim report does still mention a few steps around aspiration and raising aspiration with pupils. So it was just to expand on the plans for that a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, and I think it would be fair to say that creating that culture of aspiration is probably one of the trickiest things to do, because we're talking about changing a culture that has been been in place across many years. So it's about encouraging everyone to be their best and encouraging the non-acceptance of not being your best. So there are a few more concrete things that we can do. So one of them is that as a school we have quite a high rate of young people leaving us at the end of S4, whereas if young people do stay on to S5 and S6, they have improved outcomes with us. So that is one area where we are doing our best to ensure that our young people see their senior phase as a journey over 3 years, with from S4 to S6, with those 3 years being spent predominantly at Arbroath Academy. Linked to that is we have a much more robust and rigorous process in place for young people choosing their senior phase pathways. Linked to that has been the introduction of Angus Academy this session, which allows our young people the opportunity to study courses at levels that they perhaps would not have been able to study within Arbroath Academy, because we simply wouldn't have the numbers to make those classes viable. So that has been helpful in terms of raising those aspirations for an increased number of level 7 qualifications. You'll maybe remember from your days at school as well that there comes a point in the school year where sometimes pupils and parents want to either drop courses or sit courses at a lower level than they perhaps were originally intending to be put forward for. Again, we have more robust processes in place. It's not simply a case of, oh, I would like to drop that. Oh, well, that's okay then. There are systems and processes in place, one of which is that all principal teachers meet with me and meet with year heads and the SQA coordinator in the school. And in order for things to be signed off, there have to be a series of interventions which have taken place with young people and parents before that can go ahead. we have also introduced for our young people at risk of not achieving qualifications for various reasons, whether that be attendance, mental health issues, etc., young people who find it difficult to get into the building. We have introduced something called Academy Futures, which is a very bespoke programme, a very individualised programme for young people with the aim that they achieve at least 5 qualifications. So again, it's making sure that for all young people, whether it's those who are going to go on to university to become our doctors and our lawyers, or for those young people who are more at risk, that we have ambitious plans in place for all of those young people. I think as well that the participation in the Accelerate programme helps us with this, because we're able to see what excellence looks like in other places. We're also able to tap into other areas of expertise within those 19 schools. For example, just before Christmas, we had staff going up to Turriff Academy to look at learning there, which I saw the start of yesterday in a business studies lesson in our school. So we're really seeing the payback and the impact of that already. So I think that all goes to increasing the ambition and the aspiration for our young people.
Councillor Speed, no, I've got Councillor Melville and then Councillor Bell.
Thanks, Convener. Yes, so you've kind of touched on parts of this already with your response to Councillor Doran's question, but I was wondering if you could give us some more specific examples of how the young people's learning experience has improved. I mean, you've obviously talked about the Accelerate programme, that's really encouraging to hear, but are there other areas that you're noting improvement, and if you could give us some details of that?
Thank you. Yes, so one of the areas that we've been working on is making sure young people are more actively involved in their learning. So our young people will tell you, if you ask them, that they are now more actively involved than they have been previously. Some examples of that are through our project-based learning. We have timetable project-based learning for S1 and S2 classes, but we also have project-based learning taking place within specific subject areas. So one example I could give, and these relate to real life and real world context. So one example might be our project with Angus Soft Fruits, where we have collaboration with Angus Soft Fruits in Arbroath, and we have colleagues from science, from home economics, from business studies involved in planning the learning for S1 pupils. We have our partners from Angus Soft Fruits come in with the various aspects of the massive business that it is. And they learn about that, then they create products, they present it to a panel, etc., and then they make the winning team makes the product for the Angus Soft Fruit workers, who then in turn have to pay for that. So that's one example. Another example is in our second year project-based learning, we've recently been doing some work, some very local work. So for example, we've been working on sustainability within Angus and Arbroath. We've had colleagues from Angus Council Planning Department in to planning and infrastructure to meet with the young people to talk about their plans. That's then being carried forward into a more focused look at climate change and the impact on our oceans, etc. And if you were to go to the Signal Tower Museum in Arbroath now, you would be able to see the fruits of our S2 pupils' labours, in that there's now an exhibition on our seascape project in there. So pupils are, through this, they're working in teams, but they're also they're enjoying meeting people from outside the school and actually seeing, again, being aspirational, seeing the other jobs, etc., the other futures that are out there for them.
Thank you very much. That increases their confidence level, I'm sure, as well. Thank you. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mrs. Mohammed. I was actually going to ask about how you kind of develop the culture of learning throughout the school, but you've blown that answer right out of the water. Your enthusiasm and passion is just incredible. I've got a really soft spot for Arbroath Academy. I used to do a lot of work with some of the staff there in a past life, and I just wondered if you could talk a little bit more about the work you're doing around the whole school family, particularly around parents, and how they support their children in the children's aspirations, and what your plans are for that longer term, please, because I think that's an area where we need a degree of momentum and to see those outcomes. Thank you very much. Really great responses.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Yes, parents is certainly one of the areas that we know we need to do further work on, and certainly something that I've been really cognizant of since taking up post. While we have our traditional parents' evenings, if you were to look at our data, which we do, our attendance is not where we would want it to be. So we have tried to think of other ways in which we can engage parents in the work of the school. So one example is that we have, we've done two now. We've had an open morning for our S1 and our S2 parents, where we invite parents in to go into classrooms to look at the learning, to see what's happening, and then to hear from pupils on different things which are happening in the school. So that's been successful. Another area of success is that we had our P7 transition event this year was centred again in Arbroath. It's all about using our local context and making sure that our pupils are connected to where they come from. So the culmination of the second day of the P7 transition was to invite parents in to look at what the young people had been working on since the project started in their primary schools in May up until June when they came in. So we had a full assembly hall. So that's another way, I think, getting parents in to see the work of their young people is the way that we will encourage more and more of our parents in. And through doing that, then the hope is that we will begin to see increased attendance at parents' evening. But having said that, one change that we're making this year is that we have introduced something called Crew in first year. Forfar Academy have also introduced it this year as well. And that means that there'll be a change from the traditional parents' evening, where you, as you will know if you've had a secondary age child, where you dot around the assembly hall for 2 hours. It's quite stressful because teachers go out of time. You want to make sure you see all the parents, all the teachers that you've signed up to. So this year, for our first years, what we will have is something called student-led conferences. So the parents will come in and the first years will present their learning to their parent with their Crew leader. And that will, again, we think, encourage more parents in. When you will always want to go and see your child presenting, your child performing, etc. So that's another change we've got coming on stream this year.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Speed.
Thank you. Thank you for coming today. I'm a past parent of a pupil of Arbroath Academy, and also it's within my ward as well. So clearly a lot of work that's been going on to make these improvements. I just wondered, within these improvements, within the changes, within the shift in culture that we're seeing, that you've explained and touched on in quite great detail, what kind of differences are we seeing for our children with additional support needs? And in terms of that pathway through kind of into S5 and 6, are those pupils able to stay on in the same way as other pupils, or is the pathway not as clear? Of course, for pupils who are wishing to stay on, is that possible regardless of where they're at with their academic ability, or does staff and resources and does that play a part? Is that an issue?
Thanks, Councillor Speed. Absolutely, the opportunities are there for all young people to remain until the end of their 6 years of education at Arbroath Academy. Just last year, we saw a significant improvement in the attainment of learners with additional support needs within the school. Having said that, I think what you're perhaps talking about is the young people who spend perhaps more of their time within our ASN faculty. Obviously, we have about 40% of our young people across the school who have an identified additional support need. But we have a much more blended approach now to learning in Arbroath Academy. So almost all young people are out in the mainstream for some of their time, depending on their level of need and depending on the supports that they need. Again, in first year with the crew model, all young people are part of an S1 crew. There's no one who's excluded from that. So again, we believe that that model will help support young people through their time at the Academy, that the opportunities are there for all. So resource is always a question in schools, but we make the absolute best of all the resources that we've got, and everyone has an equal entitlement to the resource that's in the school.
Thank you. And Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, everybody. And great to hear from you. And this has not been an easy time for you, and that's got to be addressed. So very quiet enthusiasm, I see, and that's brilliant. Really well done. A couple of things, because my background is working with young people in a past life, and something that I'm very passionate about is music. And I see that as a great leveller. And right across Angus, we have some wonderful musicians, including Arbroath youngsters. So it's not a question, really. I just noticed that they were there. But one question I would ask is, again, I used to work with peer group educators, young people helping each other. And I guess it'll be specifically in there, somewhere hidden in there. But I just wanted you to maybe tease out a wee bit about that. Does that happen? Is it helpful?
So thank you. And in terms of music, we've had a tricky period with music in the school over the past couple of years, but we have employed 2 new music teachers last year who are having a significant impact on the young people and their musical outcomes in Arbroath Academy. So you'd be welcome to any future shows that we have. In terms of peer education, yes, I mean that is present, whether it be 6th years helping young people out in classes. We also have some young people who go into the primary schools working with Angus and other Angus staff in terms of helping support young people in the primary schools. So there's a range of sort of peer education goes on throughout the school. We also have had MVP mentors in the school where they go in, and so they're groups of senior pupils who've been trained to go in and deliver part of the PSE programme for other learners. So there's quite a wide range.
Thank you. Now, are there any comments? Councillor Doran.
Thank you. Just a quick one. There's obviously been a huge amount of learning here for the school and from the teachers, and I know that culture change isn't easy. So it's just a comment to say it'd be great to see the learning that's taken place here shared across the schools across all of Angus, because there's obviously been a lot of work there, and wouldn't want to see something else that was seen in the Arbroath report coming up in any other inspection. So just a comment to see that. Great to see that happen.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your great answers to these questions. It's quite a grilling. Oh, sorry. Councillor Braze has got a comment.
Yes, thanks, Convener, and thank you, Mrs. Mohammed. Thoroughly enjoyed your presentation and your answers to the various questions, and particularly your obvious enthusiasm for this. Very interesting account of the Accelerate programme and also your work with Angus Sortroots and others. Engagement with parents, I was really pleased to hear that you're trying to innovate new ideas as to how you engage with parents, because it really is so important. pupils are only in school for a very short time, and parents really need to be involved in children's education if they're to get the most out of it. So I was really pleased to hear that you're making efforts in that area. I always enjoyed going to parents' evenings when my daughter was at Montrose Academy, because I always bumped into people who I was at school with at these when I was at school. The thing was, though, that they tended to be there with their grandchildren, such as like that. But thank you very much, and good luck to you in all your endeavours.
Thank you, Councillor Braes. Can always depend on you for a bit of a laugh. Thank you. Thank you very much, both of you. Oh, sorry, recommendations. 2 recommendations. Knows the outcome of the further inspection and request the Director of Education Lifelong Learning to submit a copy of the further report, which will go to Education Scotland in 25. Okay, thank you. Thank you. We agree? Okay, Kirsty's been sitting here for a long time waiting for her part. So we've got number 6, Angus Children's Residential Project. And Kirsty Lee is going to present it.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm actually going to hand over to Peter McDonnell, who's the service leader, and Claire Dixon as the service manager to introduce the report. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I've got Claire Dixon, Manager for Residential Resource, with me as well. This report briefs members on the progress towards opening of our new 4-bedded children's residential house for over 12s in Brecon. The project is progressing within the timeline. Internal works to the house have now commenced just at the start of the new year. Recruitment is also well underway. Just to make sure that we've got a skilled and competent staff team, and I think we're about 2/3 there at the moment. And we hope to be welcoming young people in and around about the end of April, beginning of May onwards. As you'll see from the report, we also anticipate matching at least 2 young people from our external residential resources out with Angus to support our ambition to return children back to the local area. At the point of approval in 2022, committee agreed to the delivery of a further house. The report recommends that this is paused through the year to allow the new house to open, to appraise how this is going, and also to enable us to undertake a review of wider service priorities, particularly in relation to enhancing our community supports to keep children at home. And that's really about making sure that we take a pragmatic approach and that we're targeting resources in the right areas. That's as far as I want to say in terms of introduction to the report, and Claire and I are happy to take any questions from members. Thank you, Convener.
Thanks very much. Questions? Councillor Gregg.
Since I was elected, we've heard from Catherine Lindsay, the Chief Executive, who, when she was the Chief Social Worker Officer, and also from Kirsty, have time and time again told us how important it is that children that require, for whatever reason, the best place for that to happen is here in Angus. This is where they grew up, this is where their families are, this is where their schools are. And a consequence of that is it actually works out cheaper. But most importantly, it's what's best for those young people. So I'm concerned and I'm disappointed to read this report asking for a pause, because I note the words service review and strategic review and pause, and I read that as being council speak for a reduction in staff, a reduction in service, and it's really actually not going to hopefully be what we would have wanted it to be. So my question is that if we do agree to pause this, when and if will it be unpaused?
It's not really as straightforward as that. I mean, as I said, I think this is partly pragmatic to enable us to get the new house up and running. But as is detailed in the report, and kind of relating back to what you said about maintaining young people in Angus, we've done considerable amount of work, so it's been a multi-factored approach in terms of managing our external resources. And we're at a point now where we, through that work, are seeing the numbers reduce. I think there will always be a need for specialist external resources. A number of our young people have really very complex, significant trauma, and they need the wraparound and additionality that external resources provide. I think we've worked really hard over the last couple of years in particular to ensure that we are matching young people to the right resource, and I think that's seen an increase in the level of stability of those placements. And certainly over the last 6 months, I chair our residential resource panel, which monitors the external placements, and we're seeing a number of our young people that are achieving and attaining educationally way beyond actually what was additionally identified that they would achieve. So that is certainly positive progress. I think building a house and building further houses, I think we could certainly accommodate young people in those houses, but what we actually also need to be doing is ensuring that we're enabling young people to remain in family-based care, either in kinship care, foster care, or with their parents. And that's what I mean about having the wider strategic overview and ensuring that we're developing our family and community support services. And what we've actually seen at the moment is that we're now targeting more staffing towards that. So it's not about reducing staff, and it's actually about providing additionality in terms of our, if you like, toolkit to be able to support families to remain together in Angus and to enable young people to remain in family-based care. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect is that we actually need to, I think, scope out what the demographic of our care experienced young people looks like, and whether we, going into the future, need another 4-bedded house or whether we need something that's a bit more flexible and targeted. For example, say a 2-bedded house that enables us to provide interim care when there's emergency placements, that prevents young people going out of the area in an emergency, so that we can then support that transition to the next placement. Or we're providing more kind of shared care to enable young people to remain in family-based care with additional support. So that's what we mean by scoping out strategically what we feel that we need going forward. So this is not saying that we're going to completely withdraw from the idea of a new house. It's about being clear about what it is that we actually need for the children and young people of Angus, and that we target that in the right way when resources are pretty short.
Seeley would like to come in as well.
I suppose just to headline it, so I completely appreciate the concern when you see service review that there is an ambition that we will reduce frontline services. So just to, as I say, headline that is absolutely not the intention. For assurance for committee members, it's about what is it that we need to deliver in the best way, just as Peter says. Now, there's a couple of things we'll look at that. The slightly downward trend in terms of using external placements, how do we continue to shift the balance of care? The profile of needs of children and young people and children with additional support needs, also part of Clare's kind of wider service. So to say, actually, what is it that looks like? And in terms of that support in the community, we need to look at more crisis-based sort of care as well, and what does that look like to prevent placement breakdown? Because what we know is when we have to make a placement for children, it is very difficult to bring them back. So those are some of the drivers that we will be looking at. Potentially easier for us to have come today and said that we'll crack on and develop the next children's house. But I think we need to be absolutely clear it's right. So please be assured, and happy to work to a timeline to come back with the work that's gone behind that and what it is that we recommend. Absolutely, as the Chief Social Work Officer, will not be recommending that we lose any frontline resource in terms of the needs of our young people. So I hope that assures you, Councillor Gregg. Thank you.
Councillor Speed.
Yeah, thank you. I can understand Councillor Gregg's concerns. However, I also fully appreciate and understand the complexities. And for me, I think what's important is that in terms of the current house and how that's progressing, that we get that absolutely right, and that we support that staff team and those young people that are coming in to get off to the best start, because we do know in the past that there have at times been projects, new developments where, you know, maybe they've not had the right scaffolding and infrastructure around them to get the best outcomes. So I think that's, for me, really, really important. And it would be nice to hear perhaps just what will be done and left perhaps for the young people coming in, you know, those first young people that will come into the house. Will there be opportunity for them to perhaps play a part in the interior design and development of their own space? I'm sure there will be, but it would be good to have those assurances. And also within the report, it does kind of make reference in terms of the improvement and reduction of figures of external placements. But I wonder what's been done, coming back to kind of a similar theme as to what I've touched on already, to ensure that actually what we're seeing though is good positive outcomes for young people, and that young people's rights are being upheld, and that if they are wishing to come back to Angus, that, you know, we're doing all we can to make sure that that happens, and not just kind of looking to secure maybe a permanence without Angus, but actually doing the right thing for each and every one of those young people that are out with Angus at the moment. Thank you.
I'll take that last one first before kind of passing on to Claire. I kind of mentioned that I chair a residential resource panel which monitors and has an overview of all our external placements, and Claire is also part of that. What we've done in terms of the development of that is to ensure that we've got, you know, clear links in with the care planning process for looked after children, and ensuring that we also have the voice of young people coming into the residential resource panel. So we're kind of clear on what young people's wishes are in terms of their placement and development. And as I said earlier on, we're also seeing, I think, with the increased stability in a number of the placements that over the last 12 months in particular, I think that the graphs are kind of difficult initially to kind of get your head around. The first graph is essentially about the total number of placements, and the next one is about the placements made during the course of the year. And within that, there has been some instances where young people have been in more than one external residential placement. We've also had some young people that have stepped in and out of secure. And that's been another aspect that we've worked really hard with locality colleagues to manage that transition, to ensure that, again, that we're getting the placements right and matching as best we can for young people. We were really pleased, particularly, as I mentioned earlier on, to see the increased level of attainment from young people. And that's not just in terms of certification, it's about their participation in the local communities where they're based, and the clubs and sports and other aspects that they take part in. And certainly when we're looking at the transition planning for young people, we try and do that at an early point to make sure that we're, again, getting it right to support that transition back into Angus. And it's mentioned in the report, we've got a couple that are ongoing at the moment, both in terms of moving into independence, but also some young people that we're looking at transitioning into our own local resources. And again, that's done alongside the young people to make sure that's as successful as possible. And Claire will speak to the other specific aspects regarding the house.
In terms of the house, there will be some aspects that we will make decisions about, and that's down to building regulations and other parts around that. However, the children that are moving in will have the ability to pick and design their bedroom. We're in debate about whether they do things like choose their own bed and so forth, because that's quite daunting for children who are at the point of transition, making huge decisions that children in the main wouldn't normally make. But there is the option, and will be plenty of opportunity for them to take part and furnish and decorate the house as they see. And it'll be an evolving process as well, because that'll depend on children and their tastes and how that evolves. So yeah, they will be involved throughout all of it. Trouble?
Councillor Meakin.
Thank you, Convener. I'll apologise firstly if I've missed it in the report, but it was interesting to hear that we have a new house, 4 beds. However, we're only going to be looking at bringing 2 external placements back into the house. Now, part of the reason, I mean, obviously the main part of the reason is actually to place children as near as possible to where they should be within Angus. And my question is, if we are looking, the other part is to save some money because it costs us more to place with Angus. Why only 2? Is that because of the suitability or the assessments being done on suitability for the children?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a kind of nuanced and complex process, ensuring that we get appropriate matches within. I mean, we do it the other way when we're liaising and commissioning with external providers. And it's mentioned within the report. Claire and her team have done quite a bit of work in terms of how we profile. It's not a great term, but how we profile our young people. You know, previously it was essentially a kind of list of kind of key issues, but what we've attempted to do is take a much more person-centred approach so that we get the nuance and the personality of our young people when we're in discussions with providers. And that's, I think, what's benefited the matching process externally. It's a similar process internally as well. We've said it at least 2 because we're also mindful that, you know, as you'll see in the graphs, there have been placements made during the course of last year. So, you know, we anticipate that there may well be a request or a demand for placements locally from our locality teams. So it's to try and kind of get that balance. And I suppose the other aspect is you might appreciate that, you know, again, the profile of our young people that are placed in external resources, you know, is, if you like, potentially higher tariff. So again, it's absolutely about ensuring that we kind of get that right. But in terms of the numbers that we were looking at the tail end of last year, when the report was written, there was 29 placed external. We've had a recent placement made before Christmas, but, you know, within that, the work that's ongoing at the moment, we anticipate that is likely to be down to 25 external placements. So that by the end of this month. So that work's ongoing. So, you know, we're seeing a situation whereby we're moving towards, you know, 2022 figures. So, you know, significant improvement, I think, in terms of the external placement cost pressures that we've seen over the last few years. And we'll continue to do that work to ensure that we manage that.
Thank you. If there are no more questions, are there any comments? Councillor Gregg.
I don't have a comment. I'd like to propose an amendment to the recommendations.
What's your amendment?
I would propose that recommendation 3 is changed to instruct the Director of Children, Families and Justice to submit a report on the progress of this committee by the end of August 2025.
Do you have a seconder? I think we'll need to have a wee recess just to think about that one. Well, 10 minutes. 10 minutes. Okay, thank you.
Can you stop the live stream, please, John?
Thanks everyone for that. We've had a bit of a discussion here, and I'm just going to ask Councillor Gregg if he's willing to accept another amendment really to number 3, and that there's a progress report brought to the nearest meeting in September. The actual timetable hasn't been set yet because we haven't agreed that at Council, so it will be there, and that will be a progress report to note with a further reports next year. Yes.
For the development of the business.
For the development of the business. Are you quite happy with that?
Yeah, thank you. I'm happy to accept that.
Thank you very much. So we don't need to have any vote on that. I've got Councillor Braze and Councillor Shepherd here. What is this? Questions or comments or what?
Well, mine, convener, I can really just keep it to a comment, need a response. It's just to say that I found this really quite frustrating, how long it's taken to get to this position, and I'm sure not through anyone's fault, just the difficulty we had in locating a house. That seemed to take forever. That's just the market though, I suppose. But then it took 6 months to get through the tendering process and get tenders in place, and then another 6 months to get the work done. And the whole thing's taken over 2 years to get where we are. I just find that a bit frustrating. And maybe if there's an officer who might want to give a comment on any other aspects of the length of time it's taken to get here. Now, I fully understand that these are complicated things. It's not like just buying a house and fitting a new kitchen and getting the kids in. But if an officer might like to comment, that'd be great.
Kirsty's going to comment.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Braze. I can comment just to share your frustration. I think you're right. There is no one area that I could identify as the Chief Social Work Officer where I say, actually, there's learning for the future, because it has been a series of fairly minor delays at each stage of the way, which has created a much longer timeline. So in terms of finding the right property, bidding on the right property, and then securing it, as you say, the tendering process, we've also got a care inspectorate registration process that we have to work through. And so each stage has taken a chunk of time, if you like. So I'm sorry, I can't offer any one place that we could pin this, but I think what I have had is assurance from every department involved across the council that it has been a priority. But there is no doubt that some of the skill shortages that we have in some departments have meant it's taken a wee bit longer.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Shepherd.
Thanks, convener. It's just a comment that I'm pleased to see where we're at with this. That it'll, it's not too far away now that it'll be getting used and making a difference for young people and kids coming back to Angus. It's already been mentioned already, and just a comment on like the scoping out that's been referred to. I would just ask that be minded that be as wide as possible, in the sense of, who's to say it's maybe not 2 houses we need or a centre. I think there could be a bit of spend to save here. I'm very much pro of what we've done here, and I'm pro of more of it, because I think it's very good for the long term, and there's demand nationally and locally for this type of thing. And there's no way, that I can see the service, we build something that's too big, for example, because there's just so much demand. So just really pleased with the report overall, and just be as open-minded as you can when you go to do that scoping out work. Thanks.
Thanks very much. Now, that's comments we've had, and we've also had the recommendations. Do you agree the recommendations as amended? Agreed. Thank you. Right, number 7, Angus Justice Social Work Service Annual Report from Kirsty Lee.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So thank you for the opportunity to present the second annual report for Justice Social Work Services, enabling you as members to have closer oversight of our criminal justice service delivery. So the service continues to perform well. Of note is the stability in social work staffing and low numbers of vacancies. a stabilisation of work back to pre-COVID levels, with backlog hours for unpaid work and court work now settling. Community payback orders have increased, but successful completion of these has decreased this year, which is on page 65 of your combined papers. We're observing this closely. A number of facts on this, for example, within the wider system, trying to reduce the prison population numbers, more community disposals, and the complexity of needs of individuals who present for community disposals. In terms of MAPA and the MAPA annual report, the numbers and management of registered sex and violent offenders remains fairly static, with no matters to note. In respect of section 2 of the Justice Report on Finance, it has now been confirmed that both the uplift and the COVID funding for justice will become part of the base section 27 grant, which will support the service in the coming year to make some important developments around bail supervision and to bring the Caledonian programme for domestic abuse to Angus. So that is positive news in terms of funding. I have Alison Henry here today, one of our Justice Service Managers, and we're happy to take questions on the report. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Do we have any questions? Councillor Bell.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the report. I mean, I sit on the Community Justice Partnership, and I'm aware of the enormous work and collegiate approach that we put into supporting people through the system. I wanted to pick up on sort of public engagement and communication. We did a good bit of work pre-COVID around starting that process and helping people to understand why community justice is a good thing and what it means, and keeping people out of prison is a good thing with the right support. And I just feel, you know, that the narrative on social media, exacerbated by some of our own print media, is undoing a lot of that good work. I think what are plans afoot to improve that, so that people fully comprehend that it's not about punishment, and you know, it's much higher value than that. It really concerns me the escalating narrative that you see around that element of punishment that is just beyond anything that is reasonable in my view. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Councillor Bell. So I know that in the next item on community justice, that is something that our independent chair wants to pick up. But what I'll do is ask Alison to speak maybe from a service perspective about some of the work we've been doing around the successes of unpaid work, and also some of our gender-specific services that do help to shift that narrative towards recovery. So Alison.
Could you put on your microphone again, Alison?
Thank you, Councillor Bell. I think we're up against the tide, if I'm honest. It's a national issue, so it's certainly on the national agenda. We have probably been bitten twice shy, to be honest. We share really good stories, really positive stories, and they're turned round in some way or other a couple of months later to be kind of issues that we've got. So if we sell case studies or really good stories of success, if anybody was to dare relapse into anything that, you know, previous offending or previous issues with drugs and alcohol, then they'll use that against us. So we have to be really mindful of the people we work with. We have to protect them from that. But as well, we have to celebrate the stuff that we do. So it's about finding that balance. We have often gone to the Courier and other local newspapers with the good news stories of things that we do in unpaid work and how we pay back to the community, and how people, you know, rehabilitation is without a shadow of the doubt the way that we need to go, but it's not always then perceived that way or interpreted that way. So in a roundabout way, it's an uphill struggle, but it's something that's on our agenda, and we are looking to Community Justice Scotland to help us push that forward at a much more national level. I agree, though, the social media and the responses we get to some things is pretty horrific, and it's our job to protect the people we work with.
Thank you very much, Alison. It is obviously a very difficult one, this. Any more questions? Comments? No? Sorry, I didn't see your little finger there.
Just to make a comment that I think this is a really informative and important report, and didn't feel like I needed to ask any further questions on it, but just to recognise that it is a really important one, and it's the details really appreciated.
Thanks very much for that. Okay, the recommendations are considers and approves the Angus Justice Service report and notes the comment of the Multi-Agency Public Protection MAPA arrangements. Do we agree these? Thank you. And we move on now to Angus Community Justice Partnership annual report, which is going to be presented by Catherine Baker, who is the independent chair. Thanks very much, Catherine.
Thank you very much. Just, I guess, just for a point of note, I'm not actually an independent chair. I am the chair of the Community Justice Partnership, but not in an independent chair role in the same way that Ewan is. I do it alongside my day job. So I'm really pleased to present to you the Angus Community Justice Report for last year. I think that's kind of set against a backdrop of the introduction of a new justice strategy in Scotland in 2022, and a period since then where we've been asked by Community Justice Scotland, who are our kind of main oversight organisation, of lighter touch reporting. That would be their words, not mine. But I think we're now kind of moving into a phase where we are really looking at tackling some of the ambitions that are contained within that new strategy, particularly around trauma-informed and person-centred approaches, and a focus on prevention and early intervention approaches as well. So in terms of the kind of highlights of the report, you've had the report there. We've tried to make it accessible and readable, and I hope you've all enjoyed reading it. We have worked to have a more robust governance and accountability of the Community Justice Partnership, and have worked over the last year to develop better relationships and better reporting arrangements with Angus Community CPP.
Protecting people.
No. Community Planning Partnership. Thank you, that went completely out of my head for a second. We've also brought into the realms of the Community Justice Partnership the Antisocial Behaviour Strategy, and that now sits as a subgroup to the partnership and reports into the partnership, and we have had much improved integration with the Protecting People agenda, which I think has been really helpful in helping us identify and work collaboratively with some cross-cutting issues, particularly around substance use. I think that's kind of very relevant. The report highlights some areas of good practice and performance, and those are notably around the work that our colleagues in criminal justice teams have taken forward around diversion from prosecution, and the bringing back of custodies to forfeit has enabled a greater input into arrest referral. Both of these are really about tackling issues early on and understanding the underlying causes of offending. As you'll see from the report, the vast majority of people involved with justice services are managed in the community, and Councillor Bell has kind of really raised, I think, one of the challenges that we have in our Community Justice Partnership, and that is around the perceptions that communities have often that a community-based disposal is a bit of a soft option. In fact, what we hear from people with lived experience is that, you know, a community-based disposal can actually be a tougher gig than a custodial sentence, because there is an awful lot more to a community payback order than just doing a wee bit of unpaid work. So I think we do have a job around challenging some of that public perception, and we have some plans in our local action plan for next year around kind of starting with our Angus workforce. If we think about our Angus workforce are also our Angus communities. So if we can kind of start to engage with the workforce in Angus, maybe that just gives us a really good opportunity to engage with that narrative. I think that part of drawing and strengthening the breadth and scope of the Justice Partnership and trying to encourage people to see justice as their business has actually been the appointment of myself. I work for a third sector organisation, so we've now uniquely, I think, got a third sector chair of the Justice Partnership with the ambition of really trying to reach out and engage that much broader spectrum of community-based organisations to begin to think about what is their role in supporting not just people who have been charged or found guilty with offences, but the other side of that, people who are victims of offences, and how do we do that collaboratively and together. So thank you very much. I'm happy to attempt to answer any questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the report. Are there any questions, Councillor Melville?
Yes, thanks, Convener. Just touching on actually what you just said there, because we can see in the report that it talks about the limited engagement from the universal third sector organisations and other local support networks. So it was more about the kind of organisations that you were then looking to tap into and how you're intending to go about broadening that collaboration.
So I think you've got organisations who very neatly have a connection. So victim support, for example, there's a very obvious connection with justice. But organisations that are there in the community supporting community reintegration, Citizens Advice Bureau, organisations that are there supporting engagement in education and training and learning opportunities have a really, really important role to play in enabling people who have either successfully completed community payback orders, are in the process of completing a community payback order, or are coming back into their community after a period of custody, into just kind of developing the right resilience to be able to transition away from an identity of themselves as somebody who commits offences to somebody who is an active member of the community and makes an active and positive contribution to their community.
Councillor Gregg.
Thank you, Convener. You mentioned in the introduction to the report about the community payback orders can sometimes be a tougher gig. There's a small little bit about it within the report, but I was wondering if you could perhaps expand upon that and go into a bit more detail about what actually involves the CPO, because I honestly don't actually know. Thank you.
So you're probably kind of straying a bit into an area that isn't my area of expertise. I'm not, you know, that's probably quite operational, but community payback orders can include a whole range of things. So a community payback order could include an element of substance use intervention or counselling. It could include, along with paid, the kind of unpaid work, it could include other kind of therapeutic elements. It could include elements that are about working with families. It might include work that might be around particular behaviour. So if somebody has been found guilty of a violent offence or a domestic offence, it might include within that programmes specifically to address domestic violence. So like a whole range of things.
Thank you. Did you want to come in there, Rebecca? No? Okay. Right, no more questions. Are there any comments? No. Oh, Councillor Bell.
Thank you. Thanks, Catherine, for that. I just wanted to come in on the aspect of the community payback orders and the activities that some local groups in my ward have engaged people on CPOs for, and they've been delighted with the work, and they've been delighted to be able to engage with the people helping out, whether it's fixing park benches or sorting out steps in the den, that kind of thing. So when people do, when groups do engage with our teams on CPOs, the benefits to both are manifest. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I'm chair of Forfar and Flower, and we have used the community payback teams quite a bit, and they have been absolutely fantastic. Thank you. Okay, no more comments. We'll go to the recommendations. Just considers and notes the report and notes the Council's departmental responsibilities in relation to community justice. Do we agree? Thank you. And number 9, Care Inspector's inspection of housing support care leavers. Kirsty Lee is introducing this report.
Thank you, Convener. The housing support aspect of the Horizon service was inspected in August last year, with the report published in December. The inspection covered only the registered part of the service, housing support for care experienced young people. It's been very difficult to separate out the specific housing support aspect from the more general through care and aftercare support offered to all of our young people leaving care, and that is referenced both in the covered report and the Care Inspectorate report. The report grades the provision as adequate in supporting wellbeing and weak in relation to staff, team and leadership. Of note in the inspection report are the positive relationships and trust between the staff and young people. The service is noted as being successful in achieving their aim of preventing youth homelessness. The breadth of support, including housing support, through care, aftercare, youth justice and diversion, as well as unaccompanied young people over 16, is noted as an issue by the Care Inspectorate. We accept there's a need to improve our focus on the housing support aspect we provide to young people. However, we are simply not operating on a scale where it's possible to separate completely a housing support service for care experienced young people. An integrated approach to supporting the range of needs of a young person remains our focus. We have, however, taken the step to move youth justice statutory work from the Horizon team and move it to the Justice Service, which we see as a positive development. The issues highlighted in the report are in the main related to a need for service-wide improvements on process, information for young people, including our complaints processes and staff training. I can confirm the improvement plan has been submitted and accepted by the Care Inspectorate, and the requirements are either met or on track to be met in the timescales provided. The inspection presents an opportunity for us to take stock of the housing support model we have in Angus, and particularly the support out of traditional office hours, and review what improvements we can make jointly with wider partners. Again, I have Alison present and either of us can answer some of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirsty. Do we have any questions? Councillor Speed.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's a shame to see a decline in the inspection results within this report compared to previous years. However, it is good to hear that there is going to be a sharper focus, particularly on the housing support aspect, because we know that these, some of the young people being supported, have significant need and deserve the right supports in place. I just wondered if you would be able to provide some assurances around the necessary improvements to support staff as well that will be implemented, particularly the training and development plan, because I think that is crucial that the staff are best equipped to support these young people. And can you also please confirm if the young people themselves that are currently with the service have been involved perhaps in an advisory kind of role capacity in terms of shaping the tenants pack and the design of the complaints process, because we obviously need to make sure that it is user friendly and that young people are probably the best place to advise as to what that needs to look and feel like to best inform and equip them.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask Alison to speak specifically to training and to the involvement of young people. But I think the thing that I would want to point out, and it's in there, is that what we provide in terms of housing support is conflated slightly with what we provide for all our young people, so our through care and aftercare support. Now the quality of that support will come as part of our wider integrated children's services inspection. So this focuses purely on the housing support aspect. Part of that is what we offer out of hours, and you'll see the concierge part of the service is referenced. Our concierge staff work out of hours, so they don't work traditional office hours, and they are singleton workers doing a very difficult job. What we provide out of hours is essentially a safety net service. It is not a housing support service. The quality of that support is good and is provided in office hours. So in terms of what the staff are being asked to do, this can come across quite difficult because we're graded as weak in terms of staff. That is not about the individual staff, it's about the model that we are providing. And that's why I say this gives us an opportunity to look more widely at what that model is in terms of housing support, both within hours, being a bit clearer about what it is our staff are delivering, and out of hours. So in terms of supporting the staff, we want to give those messages about the comments in this report. I think quite strongly note the relationships between staff and young people and the value that they've taken from them, and we need to ensure that our staff hear that, as well as some of the improvements we need to make in the service. So Alison, I'll come to you to just highlight some of the work you've been doing with the team.
I think, obviously, from my point of view, it's disappointing to have seen that kind of outcome of the inspection, and we were aware of some of the issues. I think we're really good at what we do, but we're maybe not that good at measuring it or recording it. So for me, that's the main aspects we need to look at now. We've got a very experienced staff team who go over and above on a daily basis, you can imagine. And I think as well, the changes over the last couple of years, we probably haven't kept up to date with some developments because it's a change in culture of what we're working with. So what we've seen is a massive landscape shift with the young people. There's much more mental health issues, there's much more crisis intervention, there's much more homelessness. So what we're dealing with is really quite different to what we were, say, 5 years ago. Training, because of that, we've probably not kept up to date with that. So we're really, really enthusiastic to kind of have the opportunity from this to do some stuff. And that includes specific training about we need to become a trauma-informed and trauma-responsive service. I don't think we're quite there yet, and we've got quite a lot of work to do with that, especially with our concierge and support staff. And we also need to look at how our roles and responsibilities have changed over the years. What my team tend to do is take on board everything. So we need to go back to basics. We're not mental health experts, we're not housing experts, and we're certainly not drug and alcohol experts. We're there to help young people find safe independence in the community. And I think what we find is that we sometimes try to do everything for them and then miss out on the stuff that we should really be doing. So we've got a very clear plan going forward that's just about learning to be able to take a step back from some of that stuff and do what I honestly think we do really well. As Kirsty said about the housing support, I think the language was quite confusing. I think the inspector found the language quite confusing. We talk about Millgate Loan where we've got flats as housing support, but it's not really, it's just houses we have that there's staff there to kind of pick up anything that if something goes wrong, but it's certainly not supported, and it's not staff who've got experience in supporting young people with the needs that they've got at the moment. So we need to look at what is appropriate training. We've got all that available within the council already. We just need to utilise it better and make sure they're getting what they need. We've obviously put quite a lot of things in place since then, but certainly our supervision's become much more in line with the other services that we have with, again, vicarious trauma. The things that our staff team are experiencing on a day-to-day basis are actually pretty horrific. So, we're dealing with really different things, and it's really difficult for the staff to manage to reflect on that and cope with that on a day-to-day basis. They go home most nights worrying about young people because they're young people and we're not always convinced they're going to be okay when the next day when we come in. So yeah, there's that aspect of making sure they've got what they need around them to be able to safely do that job. What was the second big aspect?
It was about involvement of young people.
Yes, but again, probably quite disappointed because we just recently updated the pack for Millgate Loan and young people were involved in it. And it's certainly, if you see the old document and see the document that we have now, it's completely different. It's written from a service user's point of view, and it's a really nice document. So again, we've got young people involved in that. As you can imagine, young people are very straight to the point. If we've made any mistakes, they are more than happy to point those out to us and kind of put us in the right direction of what it is they're looking for. So again, we have changed a lot of things lately based on our young people. I think we always feel we're doing the best for them, but if we don't ask them what the service is like and we don't get that feedback, we won't make those changes. So much more focused on the young people being part of that. That can be difficult. A lot of our young people are in absolute crisis. They're not thinking about helping us. They're not thinking about independent living. They're thinking about will they make it till the next day. So it's really hard to go and work just now. but we've got a positive plan and improvement plan in place. And like I say, I think we're all a little bit enthusiastic that we've got the opportunity to do all this and concentrate on it now.
Thank you, Alison. Well, your enthusiasm will drive it forward. I'm absolutely sure of that. Any more questions? Any comments? No. Thank you very much. So recommendations are: note the inspection findings and agrees the Director of Children, Families and Justice has oversight of the improvement plan and submits the necessary updates to assure the Care Inspectorate that progress is being made. Do we agree? Agreed. Okay, thank you very much. It hasn't really been a long meeting, but thank you.
Start the live stream, please, John.